One of André de Toth's talents as a director was an extraordinary instinct for casting. His films often featured actors in unexpected roles, as though de Toth saw something in them no one else had bothered to explore. For example, Gene Nelson was really a dancer. This is his only detour into noir. He got into show business because he idolized Fred Astaire. He made crime wave between starring in Painting the Clouds with Sunshine and She's Back on Broadway. As his wife, de Toth cast relative newcomer Phyllis Kirk, who since her debut in 1950 had only small supporting roles in musicals and comedies. His idea was to surround this handsome, appealing couple with a bunch of nasty plug uglies, namely Doc Penny, the brains of the outfit, otherwise known as Ted DeCorsia, one of the premier character actors in noir.
Think about that wife of yours, Steve. You can't afford to make any mistakes.
He looks like a guy who spent his whole life in boxing gyms and bookie joints and ended up with his mug on a bunch of post office walls. But DeCorsia, the son of vaudevillians, was performing on stage from the time he could walk. He was in demand as a radio actor in the 30s and 40s thanks to his facility with dialects. But of course, with a face like that, he was typecast as soon as he got to Hollywood. He showed an oily menace in his movie debut, Orson Welles' Lady from Shanghai, and the die was cast. You can smell the sweat and hair cream on this guy in The Naked City, The Enforcer, The Big Combo, Slightly Scarlet, and The Killing. Penny's henchman Ben Hastings, a.k.a. Charles Buczynski, alias Charles Bronson. When he signed on to Crime Wave, Buczynski hadn't yet had a credited role, so you could say de Toth discovered him, although I doubt the director would have imagined that Buczynski would become, 20 years later, the biggest box office star in the world. De Toth was loyal to actors he liked, and he cast Buczynski in his next picture as well, the 3D horror show House of Wax, also written by Crane Wilbur. Phyllis Kirk would co-star in that one as well. In fact, it's the movie she's most known for. But if de Toth had a favorite among the Crime Wave cast, it was the guy who checked out early, Gat Morgan, a.k.a. Nedrick Young. He'd gotten his start at Warner Brothers, signed as a threat to replace Humphrey Bogart if the star got uppity. But Young also did some writing, co-scripting one of the weirdest films of the 1940s, Monogram's Decoy. He continued to write and act, mostly in B pictures, and he first worked for de Toth in the 1952 Gary Cooper Western, Springfield Rifle. He also appeared in House of Wax, and it was on the set of that film where Young was served a subpoena to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee. His unfriendly testimony led to his being blacklisted for the next 5 years. To make ends meet, he took jobs as a junkman, luggage salesman, and bartender. He was making cocktails one day for a producer at MGM who recalled that Young years earlier had proposed a story for a Gene Kelly musical. It was dusted off and revised for Elvis Presley as Jailhouse Rock. Young got a story credit, which encouraged him to return to writing. Under the name Nathan Douglas, he won the 1958 Best Screenplay Oscar for co-writing The Defiant Ones. He had to accept the prize under his assumed name. Young also co-wrote the script for one of 1960's biggest hits, the film adaptation of the play Inherit the Wind. Asked that year if he'd ever actually been a communist, Young said, "On the day my answer makes no difference as to whether or not I can get work, I'll buy you a drink and tell you." And lastly, how can I not mention the uncredited appearance of the singularly bizarre Timothy Carey, on hand to terrorize Phyllis Kirk with some extreme mugging? He may overdo it, but he earned his paycheck by taking one of the best tumbles down a staircase I've ever seen. I once asked André de Toth about working with Carey. He glared at me with his good eye, the other one was glass behind a patch, and said, "You cast Carey to get what he was. Crazy." Carey's lunacy is legendary, as I went into at some length when we showed Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, in which he has a memorable role. Kubrick certainly liked Carey's unique persona. he cast him again in 1957's Paths of Glory. So, all you folks who wanted to see Crime Wave so badly, let us know what you thought of it on the Noir Alley Facebook page or Twitter feed. Next week, I'll be back with something very different, a rarely seen World War II drama directed by the most renowned production designer in American cinema, William Cameron Menzies. It's called Address Unknown. And while it's not a true noir like The Postman Always Rings Twice, it's got more darkness, desperation, and artistic ingenuity than you'll find in most films of the era combined. Be here for it, or I may go postal.